Hi, I'm Kay Spivey. Welcome back. Today I wanted to talk briefly about fan fiction. I started writing fan fiction while I was in high school. I think I started reading it when I was in middle school. And this was back when it was pretty much just fanfiction.net and it was a little exclusive to get into. So I started writing fan fiction. Probably some of my earliest ones were Rurouni Kenshin and Yu Yu Hakusho. Yu Yu Hakusho I was definitely reading. Yu Yu Hakusho may have been when I first started reading yaoi fanfictions. Because of Kurama and Hiei. I was really into that. And I started really seriously writing when I got into Fire Emblem. I wrote a ton of Fire Emblem fanfiction for a long time. And then when I got into Glee, that was it for me. That was where I wrote my longest fanfiction. That's where I wrote my most popular fanfictions. I grew up in fanfiction culture. And fanfiction culture now is such a big thing. Now we have fanfiction.net is not as much used. It used to be LiveJournal had a lot of fanfiction as well, and they had problems. And then you had like your individual little fan sites that had specific pairings, and that was a lot of fun. Now we've got AO3, Archive of Our Own, which is a fantastic platform. I just wanted to talk a little bit about fanfiction and how great fanfiction is, because it's such a great healthy way for people to interact with the stories that they love, which is why I don't understand authors like, I think George R.R. Martin is one of the famous ones, who really doesn't want fanfiction of his work being written, and I think that's stupid. That's just not how culture works, basically. So everything we have of King Arthur is basically fan fictions of some original folk tale. Everything we have, I mean, Lord of the Rings was basically fan fiction. Everything sort of comes from other things and sort of amalgamates together and grows and changes our experience of a thing because of other people writing about it from their own perspective, and that's such a cool thing. Like, that's how cultures have always worked. I mean, let me just grab it right here. Wicked. Ooh. Wicked is fan fiction. It's fan fiction of The Wizard of Oz. So many things are already fan fiction that it's funny when authors don't seem to want to sort of cloister their characters and be the one who has the big reveal of what happens to them in the end. They don't want to have other canons and other people enjoying them, and I don't necessarily understand why. Like, you don't want there to be other canons. You don't want to risk people liking somebody else's work better than yours. I don't know. I think it's kind of silly. I think fanfiction is such a good thing, and it's such a good thing to learn how to write. Nowadays I don't think there's as much of it. There's not as much criticism when it comes to fanfiction. But back in the day when you were writing on fanfiction.net, it was like a bloodbath every time you posted. Like, people would get on you for your spelling mistakes, they'd get on you for your grammar mistakes. Like, if you wanted to just put a drabble out there, you got like roasted. People were like, this is terrible. Like, they would just tell you to your face, like, not on anonymous or anything. People would just tell you what was shit about your story. And I don't know, like, maybe there's something to be said for being nice and actually constructive to each other, but man, is that a really good way to learn. To just be completely dragged over the coals for some funny little thing you thought of in your head that you just kind of pounded out one night. Like, you had to learn how to edit on the fly, like not taking classes. It kind of became this community where people were really sort of teaching each other how to write stories. And sometimes it became very formulaic. Like, that's where you get the super formulaic fanfiction sex scenes, which, because it worked for this person, then, you know, it sort of became almost like a meme. Like, you copy these types of things because this was working for that person. It was such a learning experience. I definitely got a lot of experience writing, especially writing short story pieces, writing longer pieces, because you already have these characters who you love and you're invested in, and you're just learning how to either expand their universe or work them into a different universe, or how to have characters interact with each other in a meaningful way. Like, it was such a great way to learn how to write, and some of the best stories I've ever written were fan fiction. I'm going to show you the first one because it eventually grew and changed and became a book. So this book, The She, was a fan fiction way initially, but it was like barely a fan fiction. Like it had the names of these two characters and they were like the like fandom accepted personalities of the characters, although not necessarily like fully canon personalities, but like the accepted personalities. And they created this like universe of these elves and magic and humans and this vast expanse of a world, and it was super sexy, but it was just such a good story. Like it was some of the most amazing literature ever. And so they basically went through, changed some of the names, took out some of the sex scenes, because this was one that had like sex scenes every chapter. It was super sexy. And they really worked on, especially with this one, they worked really hard on dealing with what happens after you've gone through extremely traumatic circumstances, how that changes you. It's just really well dealt with everything. They also added in quite a few more female characters. That's one of the things, when you're in the yaoi fandoms, the women get slighted a lot, but this one then came back and was like, I'm going to write good literature, and she did, and it's a really good book. I'm going to go ahead and recommend this one. If you are someone who already likes fan fiction, and maybe you were like, man, that 50 Shades of Grey was like not doing us justice, The She will do you justice. Promise. There was another one that was in, I read everything from the Glee fandom for a while there. I was obsessed. Kurt and Blaine, I stand them so hard. Like, the reason I watched Glee was because I became invested in Kurt and I wanted to like protect him. I wanted to make sure he was okay. Like, episode after episode, I just wanted Kurt to be happy, nothing else. And so I was reading a lot of fan fiction, and I read some of the best fanfics of my entire life. I'm gonna have to look through and see if I can find this one. There's one, if you were in the Kurt and Blaine fandom, you know Little Numbers. That was really good. That was one of the coolest fanfics because it was written as text messages, and then because it was text messages, the author found that she could put in things like sound clips and video clips, and it became this interactive thing that was all done on LiveJaw. That was really cool, and it was such a good story. That was one of the best fan fictions, and written in such a different style, a style that like needed the internet. You couldn't have had that in book form at all. That was brilliant. There was another one, and I don't remember the name of this one. I feel so bad, so if I find it, it's gonna be down below, and like read it, whether or not you ever were interested in Glee. This one had Kurt as a superhero, like superhero powers had come about, and they dealt with fandom culture as like this separate entity, like watching this main character be a superhero, and the way they dealt with the superpowers and the superheroes and how like dangerous it was, and also bringing in the fan culture from this like brilliant perspective. It was so brilliantly done, and it's another one. It even points out within it that looking at another fan fiction, like, you need to know who these characters are. You need to have this background in order for this to make sense, and it becomes this like really gorgeously woven thing. I don't think I've ever read a novel that was as intricate and wonderful. That one was so good. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna find it for y'all so you can read that, because good fan fiction. If I'm seeming a little like get up and downy or things are changing a little bit, this camera only records for 5 minutes at a time. Basically, I have to keep getting up and restarting the record every 5 minutes, otherwise I'm just talking to myself. So anyway, fanfiction can be done so well. I know there have been other instances of fanfiction sort of amalgamating and becoming a novel or becoming another thing. The She is, of course, my favorite version of that. Now everyone knows about 50 Shades of Grey. And yeah, it isn't a good representation, because there's such a great community in fanfiction, and there's such a great growing and changing of these well-liked characters to becoming this like alternate entity almost. And you can have whatever you want, like whatever kind of story you want. You can take these characters that you already love and see them in a different circumstance, and it's just such a wonderful thing. Like I think there's sort of a change now where it's become very acceptable, but there definitely wasn't for a while. It was sort of like you're stealing this person's characters, and that's not okay because it's their property. The one good thing about fan fiction, though, is that you're not selling it. It's not someone else's characters until, like with the She, it became, or from the start, it was very much the author's own character, and that was so obvious when you were reading that this wasn't necessarily these other characters. Like, it had their names, it had some other personality traits, but this was something else. And I think fanfiction allows for some writers to sort of experiment and to see what works and to learn how to write, and then get this opportunity to become a published author because you got this experience writing. And you're not stealing someone else's characters if you're writing something and putting it out there for free in your free time. Like, it's one of the best things there is in the world, is people just sharing stories. I think it's such a wonderful community. I haven't written hardly anything recently in fan fiction. I don't read a lot of fan fiction right now, but I'm so grateful that it was a part of my life growing up. I don't know what I would have done with my free time without it. I spent so much of my time reading and writing fan fiction through high school and college. I definitely think it's helped shape my writing quite a bit, especially because of how critical the culture was for such a long time. And I think we need to get back to a little of that, not just being like, oh, kudos on AO3, like getting in and being like, you had a spelling error here, by the way, I liked this chapter, but it wasn't as good as your last chapter. Like, all of that was really helpful to me. Criticism can be very stingy, it hurts a whole lot, but it's so necessary for your growth. Learning how to take criticism constructively, and like, here's someone being like, your grammar sucks, like you have to learn how to do sentence structure, like you must break into paragraphs, like you have to indent this, like you have to use quotations the right way. Like, hearing someone tell you that and then learning how to do it is so helpful. I feel like we should get back into that as fan fiction writers and readers and consumers. We should really get back into supporting each other in a way that maybe isn't all pats on the back. That was more of a tangent, I guess. I just wanted to kind of talk about that some, and how great I think the whole fan fiction culture is. So let me know, do you write fan fiction? Do you read fan fiction? If you've got an AO3 account, maybe leave it down below. I'll at least take a peek. I'll go ahead and leave my AO3 information down below on this video as well, but I'm not leaving my fanfiction.net account because some of those things, AO3 I sort of screened through and the best stories got moved over there when I got that account. Fanfiction.net has some things that maybe I don't want to associate with. Maybe I should go through and clear out some things where I really didn't know what I was doing. But you do have to have those things in order to grow and change as a writer. You have to find out what you've done wrong. So anyway, those are my thoughts on fanfiction. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!